Hello, class. Welcome to lecture 3, Asking Questions. Remember how I've been talking about that one of the first tools we're going to use to learn to use from the Research Methods Toolbox is asking questions. And that's what we are going to start learning today. So what we will be covering are 3 main items. The first one is attachment theory, and that's just kind of an example of all the things that go into developing questions and asking them. This is the stuff that's before formulating them in an exact scientific way. This is a way of about getting ideas. It's just an example that I really, really like. The second part of this lecture deals with science and research. We're going to talk about how the scientific method leads us to do good research. And then the third part, which I'll be talking about today, which will probably benefit you a lot because in your labs, you're probably starting to think about your topics, what you're going to study for your own project, and that's research ideas, generating and developing. So let's start with attachment theory. Now, I know about half you in this class are HDFS majors, so I hope that by this point you're pretty familiar with attachment styles. It's a very huge concept in human development all the way across the lifespan and in therapy, in positive functioning. And the basic idea is based upon the father of attachment theory, whose name is John Bowlby. He was not a psychologist or a developmentalist or human developmentalist. He was actually an ethologist, which meant he studied animal behavior. And one thing he noticed that when any kind of mammal was born, it immediately had a period of time where it was very attached to its parental figure. Usually that was a mother, but if the mother was killed in the wild or unavailable some other reason, it would attach to almost like the first grown-up it saw, that the first adult member of the species. Well, it didn't even have to be an adult, but that's a whole nother story. The first member of the species that showed it care. And over time, the young animal and the attachment figure would develop a relationship. And the thought was that this relationship, the first relationship that the young mammal developed, would be how it would relate to the world for the rest of its life. So with animals, that's not that complicated. But Bowlby, towards the end of his career, started thinking about humans as mammals, right? We're definitely mammals. And along the the nature side of the nature-nurture development, he thought, well, young humans have an attachment period too. And so that thought spawned all kinds of other theories and ideas about how we humans attach to our attachment figures. Usually our mothers, but sometimes a grandmother or father, or just the figure that takes care of us when we're very, very young. Usually the period of attachment is about from birth to 2. So as you can see here, this is a diagram of attachment styles. There's a whole big body of relationship theories on this, but basically it goes like this. You can see these axes here. The vertical one is proximity seeking. So that's the degree to which the baby seeks comfort from the adult attachment figure. So the top of the graph is high proximity seeking, and near the bottom of the graph is low proximity seeking. Now the horizontal axis is the amount of anxiety that the young human has, that the baby has, when he or she is separated from the attachment figure. So sometimes I've seen it referred to as confidence. If the baby has low anxiety, they appear as if they can get their needs met. They're not worried about the attachment figure's absence because they know that the attachment figure will either come back or they can handle it on their own. Now on the right side is high anxiety. And high anxiety is they're very, very frightened of being away from that attachment figure. So these two axes yield 4 attachment styles, which are highly, highly studied. The first, secure attachment, is when babies are with their mother, they're very attached to them, they have high proximity seeking. But when they're not with their attachment figure, they're not very distressed. So a secure attachment style is a baby who can trust fairly easily, is attuned to emotions, themselves and others, can communicate upsets directly. So if the baby's crying, if the mother is in tune to the baby as well, the mother knows why the baby's crying. Wet diaper, hungry, etc. The baby can communicate their upsets. And then in adulthood, this type of secure attachment leads with cooperative and flexible behavior in relationships. Because remember, we said that attachment style is assumed to be fairly stable throughout the lifespan. So what babies develop in their first formative years during the attachment period carries through the whole life. And it even carries through into dating styles, which I'll cover in a minute. Dating styles in adolescence and young adulthood. But for this point, the first attachment style is secure. That's high. They're highly attached when they're together, but they're not really stressed out or anxious when they're apart. The second attachment style, and I'm going clockwise, is anxious attachment style. And that's when the baby has a very sensitive nervous system. They're very anxious. There's high anxiety. They have trouble with communicating their needs directly, and they tend to act out when triggered. They still are very, very clingy, and they try to demonstrate how important their relationship is. Even the babies, if the babies are very, very clingy, they want high proximity, but then they get very, very upset when they're separated from the attachment figure. Still going clockwise, the one on the bottom with high anxiety and avoidant or fearful, low proximity. So that avoidant represents that they don't like to be close to loved ones, either the attachment figure or the love attachment figure later in life. They're very dependent in relationships. They strongly fear rejection. They have low self-esteem and high anxiety in relationships. And studies have been done that with babies with this attachment style tend to be more highly represented as adults in the prison system. They don't really have an internal compass, internal mechanisms to keep them from being anxious, and they don't rely on others for support. They have low proximity of contact with their attachment figure as a child and their love interest or their attachment figure as an adult. Okay, moving leftward, we've got avoidant dismissive. And this is someone who has low anxiety. I mean, they feel pretty confident that they can take care of themselves and get their needs met. They downplay the importance of relationships. They're very self-reliant, but they can become more vulnerable when there's a big crisis. So they're not anxious about it, but they really don't feel that they need others. They keep low proximity from their parental figures. And self-disclosure, I think I was when I was little, a little bit more toward the avoidant or dismissive attachment style. We have a family story that I will share with you. When I was about 4 or 5, my dad was in the Navy. I was 4. My dad was in the Navy, and my mom followed my dad. He was on a cruise to Europe. So she and a bunch of the wives, they had this little trip where they all went to Europe to travel in Europe with their husbands who were on the Navy ship. And I stayed with a neighbor for about 3 weeks when we lived in Norfolk, Virginia. And my mom came home and she was so excited to see me and she had missed me so much. And I looked at her and I said, "Hello, Mother." And I turned my head away. So I was dismissive. I was like, "Hey, you're going to leave me? I'm just going to do everything on my own." So that's a big family joke about that. I'm a little dismissive. I'm very extremely self-reliant, but not taking advantage of relationships or the comfort from relationships that could be beneficial. And then the last one, which I think I already covered, is secure. So secure is the best, most mentally healthy attachment style, and the most common in society. Studies believe that, and you noticed I was talking characteristics, both adults and children, attachment styles are stable across the lifespan, but certain events negatively, such as the death of a parent or inability of a parent to provide care, can impact attachment styles after their first few formative years, or alternatively, a really good relationship or really good therapeutic relationship or good therapy, either a love relationship or a therapeutic relationships, can change attachment styles in a positive direction. So although they're generally stable, it's believed they can change over the lifespan. And there's different ways that they are measured in childhood and adulthood. In childhood, for babies, attachment styles are measured by something called the strange situation. And that brings me to one of the main topics for today. Is the strange situation measures attachment style in children, and it was developed by a scholar named Mary Ainsworth. Mary Ainsworth is pretty famous in psychology because she did so much work on attachment style. And I'm going to talk about her in a little bit. She's famous. Dr. Ainsworth is famous for the strange situation. But first, we're going to look a little bit at how, because I'm sure you're all wondering as adults, how attachment styles are measured as an adult. And there is a 36-item adult attachment scale. It's got good psychometric properties. Remember that word, psychometric. We'll talk about it in a few lectures. And it measures attachment styles in adults. So, for example, that first question, I do not often worry about being abandoned. If someone agrees with that statement, they are probably low on anxiety. Look at question number 5. I am very comfortable being close to romantic partners. If someone answers high on that statement, strongly agree, they're high on proximity seeking. They like being close to others. So this 36-item scale, and all you need to do is Google it online, and you can take it for yourself. There's a lot of sites where you can take it and find out your attachment style. Just remember, it's just a test, and it's not a therapeutic interview or anything. So for this point, it's just for fun. But it's really interesting, a way to look at it. So what we've done is we've talked about attachment style, a really important psychological construct. I'm going to leave you for a minute or so, and we're going to come back and talk about the person who came up with these questions, this line of study that's been so influential in psychology. So I'll see you in a second.